Good Tuesday afternoon to you. Hope you're having a great day. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. A little later in the show, we will be joined by Cavs beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com, Chris Fedor. Talk a little bit about some of those Collin Sexton trade rumors. Will the Cavs keep Collin Sexton? Will they trade up? Who might they take at number 3 if they stay put? But we begin today by talking Browns football on ESPN's Get Up. The question was, who is the biggest threat to the Chiefs in the AFC? Here's one of the answers.
I'm buying into the hype, guys. I'm going to go with the Cleveland Browns. I saw this team go toe-to-toe with Kansas City last year. I'm buying into the quarterback. I think Baker Mayfield is a perfect fit. I do think they do all the things he does well, and they de-emphasize the things that are not his strength. No team can't get better by getting Odell Beckham Jr. back. That needs to work out. They've made big additions on the defensive side. I'm buying in. I know it's been about 1 trillion years, but I'm buying in to the Cleveland Browns, and I think they are the team that's going to give Kansas City a run for their money.
Let's welcome in Jeff Phelps from 92.3 The Fan, Baskin and Phelps, as well as Bally Sports. Browns pre-post. Have I missed anything, Jeff? You have a kind of a number?
I think that's it for now, Dave. You never know, though.
All right, you're always working. What do you make of that? So are the Browns the biggest threat to the Chiefs in the AFC?
I find that hard to believe, but not out of the question. The Chiefs are really good. I think the Browns are going to be really good. Until you see it, I think more than 1 year, Dave, I don't know if you can say that. There are other teams that I think are actually pretty good as well. You can't rule out Baltimore. You still can't rule out Pittsburgh. I don't care what's going on in Pittsburgh. And another team or two always jumps up a little bit. So we'll see. I don't think there's any question, though. The Browns are right there at the top of the AFC and have a chance to do great things. I mean, you cannot eliminate them as a Super Bowl contender this year. And I don't think Kansas City is that much, if any, ahead of the Browns right now.
When you look at the Browns, a lot has been made about the defense. And on paper, it would look to be a significant upgrade. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And are you concerned of putting it from paper onto the field?
Yeah, I'm concerned about that aspect of it because it sounds really good, all the additions they've made. And I don't think there's any question, Dave. Their defense is a heck of a lot better. They've added players all over the place. On the defensive line, you've brought in 3 guys who you like a lot, and McKinley and Clowney and Willie Jackson. You got to like those guys. You've added a linebacker in the draft. You've added a linebacker in free agency in Anthony Walker. I like what they've done. Bring in more defensive backs. I mean, they've done what you need to do. And I think it's been pretty impressive. I like what they've done. Another corner, bring in Newsome. You hope Greedy Williams comes back. And they have options now. I think last year they thought, all right, if all these guys are healthy, we're going to be in pretty good shape. And if they're not all healthy, we could be in trouble. Well, they were in trouble. And now if a guy isn't able to go, if he's not healthy, if he doesn't produce, I think they have other options. And I don't think they really had that last year on the defensive side of the ball. And I think now we get a better idea of what Joe Woods can really do as defensive coordinator, because everybody who was all mad at him last year, I thought that was uncalled for because their team was so beat up. Their defense was a mess physically. They didn't have the guys out there they wanted to have. They missed a couple of guys because of COVID, and Andrew Billings sat out the season. Hopefully he's a nice addition this year. So I honestly think you get a much better indication of your defensive coordinator this year and just so much more depth. And I think that's going to make a big difference.
The area of that defense that's most intriguing to me, and tell me if you agree or disagree, is the defensive line. When you start talking about the pieces that are there with Clowney, McKinley, Malik Jackson, Billings, who you mentioned, in addition to Myles Garrett, man, if those guys get it right, they have the ability to be some feared defensive line.
Yeah, and there are a couple of other guys there too. I think Porter Gustin is a guy whom people probably underestimate, and I wonder what Jordan Elliott's going to be like this year, who they drafted a year or so ago. I always like defensive lines where they can bring guys in waves. Okay, nice job for 2 or 3 plays. You're out. This guy's in. You keep going from there. I think that's key, and it'll set the tone up front, especially in a division where you're going to run the football well. Joe Mixon in Cincinnati has a chance to be very good. no question. In Baltimore with J.K. Dobbins and, of course, Lamar Jackson at quarterback, you're going to have that. And in Pittsburgh with Najee Harris, coming in from Alabama, Pittsburgh always runs the ball well. Maybe not last year, but this year I think they're going to run the ball much better. They have some backups behind Harris as well, but they're going to run him like crazy, and Roethlisberger's back. So the defensive line, I think, has to be key because you've got to shut down that run. That starts up front. Then you have three pretty good quarterbacks in the division. I know Joe Burrow's young and was injured last year. I like his upside. I think he's going to be really good. Roethlisberger, you can't throw him out of the league, and he's going to play well when he's there. I think he'll be much better a year off of his injury. And Lamar Jackson's a tremendous football player. So if you have that up front group and plenty of guys, I think it can make a big difference. And I can't wait to see Clowney, Dave, in this defense, because lining up on the other side of Myles Garrett, that could get really interesting. And I'm anxious to see that.
Yeah, I would agree. Maybe we can throw Roethlisberger out of the league finally. I mean, he's been in it long enough.
I think he's on his way, right? He has to be on his way.
Yeah. All right, so Pro Football Focus ranked 3 players from each and every franchise to build around for the Browns. Baker Mayfield, Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, all top 10 draft picks. Are you buying that as the 3 that you build around if you're the Browns?
Yes. I'm not sure about Denzel.
Yep.
And I like Denzel. You watched him play in high school. I watched him play in high school. He was terrific at Nordonia and then at Ohio State. And when he's on the field, I really think he's a tremendous corner. He's really good. He's really fast. He's got great ball skills. I really like watching him. I want him to be healthy for an entire season and show that he can do that. When he's on the field, he's tremendous. I would assume he's a guy the Browns want to have here long term and that they will sign long term. But I wonder, you like Denzel more as a guy to build around, or do you like maybe Jedrick Wills at left tackle to build around, or do you not build around an offensive lineman, or do you build around a guy like Nick Chubb? That I think those are a couple of things to think about there.
Yeah, I would agree with Denzel Ward, and it's funny, in our meeting I said Jedrick Wills as well, because I think you build along the lines. If the past couple of years has taught you anything, you need to be strong on the offensive and defensive lines as you build. And I think Jedrick Wills he's gonna take off in his second year.
Remember, he was a young guy last year too. Not just a rookie, but a young rookie. And he stepped in. He did a really nice job. So I would expect a nice jump in year number 2 for Jedrick Wills. And Dave, I hope he's a guy you build around. Look at if you don't have a good left tackle, man, you're in big trouble. And I think he's a very good left tackle as a young guy. His commercial work with Baker could use a little bit of work, perhaps, but he's not bad. You don't want to kick Amy out of the book club, but I like him.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he showed enough that you have to feel pretty good about that pick. All right, Bleacher Report: most dominating player at each position in the NFL. They did the edge rushers coming up. T.J. Watt was the preeminent one, and Khalil Mack, honorable mention. No Myles Garrett.
All right, are they saying edge rusher like you're a linebacker and you're coming off the edge, or are they talking about a guy who's going to have his hand down on the ground most of the time? Because if they're talking about a guy with his hand down on the ground most of the time, they miss the boat.
I think it's either or. They're just somebody that gets after the quarterback from the outside. And I would find it hard to not have Myles Garrett on that list, unless you're penalizing him because of the way he played after he came back from COVID last year.
If it goes 5 deep, he's on that list without question. And there's no question, you're right. He was a different player after he came back. But as a guy who suffers from asthma, he clearly had a tough time recovering from COVID, and by his own admission, was not quite at the same level. I mean, Dave, how could he be? Guy had COVID, missed time, has asthma. It's going to take a little while, right?
Yeah, I agree. All right, a little fun before we get a break. So a couple of the Heisman quarterbacks from Oklahoma, Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield. Jeff, this is for you. Take a look.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Baker, Heisman pose, Kyler Murray, a little bit of rhythm.
Was it a competition there, or what were we supposed to do?
They
both look good.
They're just having fun. They're Heisman guys having fun.
Well, there's a lot to do at the Heisman house. You know, you go out and you dance a little bit, you go inside, you swap stories.
Yeah.
That's great. You make fun of Tim Tebow.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it.
Absolutely. So there you go. A little bit of fun before we go to break. Jeff Phelps from 92.3 The Fan and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we'll hear from Louis Riddick, former front office type and player. Does he think Baker Mayfield could be a top 10 quarterback? Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. We continue talking Browns with 92.3 The Fan's Jeff Phelps. Louis Riddick on Get Up, former NFL front office type, had this to say about can Baker Mayfield be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL?
That's the million-dollar question right now for Baker. Do I believe he'll be top 10? I think he'll be right on the cusp. And I think it all depends how you wind up measuring what a top 10 quarterback is. Is it strictly a statistical measurement for you? What statistics are you using? Is it a winning measurement for you? Is it about, does Baker take his football team now to a Super Bowl? Does he get Cleveland to a Super Bowl? Does he win a Super Bowl? And I think all of that together is going to be something that Cleveland Browns management is going to have to factor in when you're talking about going ahead and trying to sign into a contract extension. Because look, they could do that right now. I believe it was Jeff Darlington who I've heard other reporters talk about the fact that they believe that maybe an extension is being worked on now. So there's obviously a lot of projection that's going on with how Baker is going to look down the road in terms of his accomplishments. I think he's definitely a wild card when you're talking about the quarterback rankings, because he's one of those guys who I think a lot of his success is going to come in a team context, and people are going to kind of classify his worth in a team context. But if you also look at it and break it out individually, he's right there with some of the statistical leaders when you're looking at advanced metrics.
And Jeff, I think it's a valid point by Louis Riddick, but I think the ultimate way you measure a quarterback is your franchise winning with him. It's pretty simple.
There's no question, Dave. I think that's the ultimate factor. And if you base it on last season, no question, Baker's certainly the guy for you, and I would assume the guy for the Browns long term. I can't imagine them not signing him to an extension. Whether or not you think Baker is worth being paid one of the highest quarterback salaries in the NFL, he's going to get it. I mean, he is the quarterback in the position on a team that's been winning football games in the last year or so and is on the rise. And you're tied to him. I mean, you use the number 1 pick in the draft on the guy. How long have the Browns been looking for a quarterback? Since Bernie Kosar? Probably since Bernie. And certainly since they've been back. Well, here's the guy. And whether or not you think he's one of the top 3, top 5, top 10 guys in the league, Dave, I don't think it matters. I mean, he's your guy. And you're not going to not sign him. What are you going to do? Go try and find another guy? No. And so you might not like his height. You might not like some of the things he does. He's your guy. And he does a lot of things really well. And he appears to be a tremendous leader. And that might be the most important thing. I've always looked back at Troy Aikman when he was in Dallas, and different body styles and different things all the way around. Troy was at Oklahoma for a while and then went out to UCLA. But I always thought Troy Aikman was underrated because he played on a team that didn't just cut it loose through the air, as so many teams did. They think about Dan Marino, think about Troy Aikman. Most people think Marino was a much better quarterback, I would assume, because he put up all the individual numbers. Troy Aikman did what his team needed to do to win football games. He had running backs. Hey, here's Emmett. Let's hand it off. It worked out beautifully. He moved the ball around. He ran a great offense. And only from that perspective, I think Baker and Troy Aikman are similar quarterbacks. Do you know what I mean by that? They're not physically the same or anything like that, but Aikman was the quarterback of a winning football operation. And I think Baker's the same kind of guy.
Yeah, and they're happy to do that. It's not, Troy Aikman didn't feel like he had to throw for 3,000, 5,000 yards a season. Let's go and win Super Bowls. And I think you're right. I think Baker Mayfield has that same kind of makeup. All right, so CBSSports.com, top 10 quarterbacks and coach combos. Oh, and this one's interesting. Okay. So number 1, Tom Brady, Bruce Arians. Number 2, Pat Mahomes, Andrew Reid. Aaron Rodgers, Matt LaFleur is 3rd. Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll 4th. Lamar Jackson, John Harbaugh 5th. Ben Roethlisberger and Mike Tomlin 8th. Baker Mayfield, Kevin Stefanski 9th. So they do crack the top 10. And a lot of times that marriage between head coach and quarterback, it's important.
It is. They better be on the same page. Do you think that's a little high?
No,
I don't know that it is, but I wonder, just based on Kevin going into his 2nd year and Baker going into his 4th year, and still, I would think having his best football ahead of him might be really impressive that they are ranked 9th after such short sample size.
I think it's going to grow. As it took Kevin Stefanski, by his own admission, till the bye to kind of figure out, all right, this is what we have in Baker Mayfield. And I think a lot of that was because you didn't have preseason, you didn't have training camp. They were done virtually. I think if the Browns would have had that in Stefanski's first year, they'd have figured it out a couple games sooner. But, they figured it out, and I liked what I saw. I really liked what I saw, obviously, the second half of that year.
I agree with you on that. There were times I thought that maybe Kevin, maybe put too much thought into being diverse on offense. There were times I thought, hey, you've got Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt here. Just run the ball. You don't have Odell Beckham anymore. Don't force the ball to wide receivers. And it wasn't a prevalent thing, but there was just enough of it that and personally, when you have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, you just hand the ball off and you run. And if you get 4 yards on first down, great. Get 4 more yards on second down, and then get 3 on third down and keep going. So I think that's an interesting aspect of the offense, and we'll see what they do this year. But I think that's one issue the team's going to face this year, Dave. If Odell comes back and he's healthy and he's the best-looking Odell Beckham that we've seen here in Cleveland, in other words, more like his first 3 years in New York, how do they move that ball around a little bit? Is Nick Chubb okay, with going 200 carries on the season, 210, 220, whatever it is? Is Kareem okay if he doesn't get quite that many? Because I think it's a tough situation. I want Kareem Hunt to get the ball like crazy. I want Nick Chubb to get the ball like crazy. I want Odell to catch 100 passes. I want Jarvis to catch 90. But I wonder, can you do that? Can you tone everybody down from an individual standpoint and let the team know and have the team buy into, hey, Nick, you're going to get 950 yards this year, and Kareem's going to get 900. And Odell, you're going to get 1,000 yards receiving, and Jarvis, you're going to get 1,100. Are they all okay with that? You know, and I think that'll be a key thing to watch this year, because you have so many weapons on the offense. You want to use them, but I wonder, Dave, if that's realistic or not. And that to me is going to be Kevin Stefanski's biggest challenge on offense.
Yeah, you know what cures that? Winning. As long as
Sure
you're
does.
winning,
Well, it usually does.
Yeah, yes.
You know, it usually does.
Yeah. If you're losing, then the touches and the yards, everybody's concerned about it, which leads us to our next topic.
Yep.
Sports Illustrated had the AFC North predictions for how things are going to roll out, win-loss totals. Browns 13-4, Ravens 11-6, Steelers 8-9, Bengals 6-11. You'd be impressed. I got the 4 losses off the top of my head in our meeting. Chiefs.
You did?
Chiefs, Ravens once, Chargers, and now I can't remember the fourth one. Oh, the Packers on Christmas night. So
They got them beating Pittsburgh twice?
Yes. Have you seen?
Wow.
Have
really?
you seen their offensive line? They have one starter back on their offensive line. One.
Yeah, I know.
And,
I know.
And Ben Roethlisberger.
And I miss Alejandro Villanueva. That's tough.
He doesn't move well. Again,
Yeah.
I think that's the high end for the Browns.
It's still Pittsburgh, man.
Yeah.
You know, I think 13 wins is a little adventurous.
That's
Do you?
That's the high end. I think it's somewhere between 11 and 13, honestly. And you know what? I could see them beating the Chargers. I really could. I could see them beating the Packers.
Yeah, and we have to. It's only one game, but we kind of have to readjust, because 10 wins isn't. Oh, you're 10-6. It means
Right.
you're 10-7.
Yes.
So you're a little above 500 there. So I would think the new norm of being maybe better, better rather than middle of the pack, is you got to win 11 games, right? 11-6 will get it done for you. I think they have a chance to win 13, but man, I'd be really impressed if they won 13 games. That just seems a little steep to me, but that's okay. If they don't get double-digit wins, I think we'd all be stunned.
I would agree.
And I think if you win 10 games, you're probably in the playoffs. 11, really good chance. I would assume you're in the playoffs. Anything more than that, you're at the top of the heap.
Jeff Phelps from 92.3 The Fan, and I got to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, some executive scouts vote on running back rankings for the NFL. We'll tell you where Nick Chubb lands in those rankings. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Better days are ahead. Be ready with the training you'll need to get a great job. If you or your family has experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Whether you want to improve your skills, get certified, or train for a new career, go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So what are you waiting for? Register now for online and on-campus summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
COVID-19 has changed how we show up and show out with our family. Now it's time to take the first step that lets us get back to talking smack with a side of mac and cheese.
Before we can safely come together, we need the facts.
As COVID-19 vaccines become available, you may have questions.
Should I get it?
Is it safe?
Should I wait?
It's smart to question. Now, get the facts at getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision when vaccines are available to you.
We continue talking Browns with 92.3 The Fan's Jeff Phelps. So executive scouts, front office types vote on this running back ranking that was on ESPN. Top one is Derrick Henry. Number 2, Alvin Kamara. Dalvin Cook, number 3. Nick Chubb was number 4. Christian McCaffrey was number 5. Take a look at what an NFC exec said about Nick Chubb. Best pure runner in football. I'd take him over Henry because he's more explosive. Chubb is good for a 20-plus yard run nearly every week, with 12 such runs in the season. Let's bring back in Jeff Phelps. And Jeff, just your thoughts on Nick Chubb and where he ranks in that ranking.
If Nick were on a team that didn't have Kareem Hunt, he would be in the rushing title talk all the time. And probably best for Nick that he's on a team with Kareem Hunt, because he had a very serious knee injury when he was at Georgia. And I've always thought if you're an NFL running back and you can still get paid, let's be honest, there's the key to the whole thing. If you can still get paid, Dave, why not have somebody to split the carries with? Why get beat up? Why have a 7-year career when you could have a 10 or 11-year career? So if I'm Nick Chubb, I love the fact that Kareem Hunt is here. But if it weren't for Kareem's presence, Nick would be at the top of everybody's list of best running backs in the NFL. As it is, he's still, way up there, and he should be. He's big, he's really a strong runner, and he is an explosive runner. And you don't always see that combination of big, strong back with the explosiveness that Nick has, and that's why I enjoy watching him run so much. He's outstanding, and I've always thought, get the guy 15 touches a game anyway. And that doesn't seem like a lot, but it goes back to what we talked about before. If he gets 15 plus touches, well, you want Kareem to get more than 8 to 10, don't you? I do. I would love to see Nick and Kareem basically splitting carries. And if Nick gets paid and gets paid like he's a top running back instead of a guy who's splitting duties, why not? I think it makes you a better team.
Yeah, and Kareem Hunt was on honorable mention, so a guy that was also receiving votes. And then an AFC exec said might be the best overall back in Cleveland. Combination of Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry. So that's a pretty good combination if you're talking those two as far as Kareem Hunt goes. The other thing is, if I'm each of those guys, the presence of the other guy extends my career by a couple of years, so I get another payday.
Sure.
That's kind of the thought process.
Sure. Yeah, if your salary's down a little because you're not putting up the numbers, but you're making up for it down the road when salaries in theory go up, why not? I couldn't agree with you more.
All right, time for us to check in on the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one, a Browns voicemail of Truth and Reason, and let's listen in.
Thinking about the situation the Browns are in right now, with the fact that to get people to come to the Browns, we had, this is in years past, we had to overpay them. But now we don't. This is now a place where people want to come to play. But and I was thinking about the free agents we have to sign, and of course you want to sign Nick Chubb, for whatever $15 million a year because he's worth it, and then you go on to to Teller, and I think Teller is more important than someone than Landry. And Teller's going to want a lot of money. He's going to want $15 million a year. But I think think about touches though. The offensive line is involved in every play, and if they screw up, your offense is built on a foundation of sand, not very good. So I would sign Teller, and and if that meant trading Landry, I think we should do it. We're loaded with possession receivers, and yes, it's harsh to get rid of Landry. He's a really good player, but if you want to win in the future, what do you guys think? Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right, Jeff. Not in a hurry to get rid of Jarvis Landry. There is a lot of money tied up in the wide receiver position. I think it's a very valid point about the offensive line. I don't know that the right guard, who came out of nowhere, is somebody that you're going to pay $12, $13 million a year. But you might. I mean, those are the decisions that Andrew Berry's going to have to make.
I know Wyatt Teller played well. He played well. I mean, you could watch in a game and see that he was doing his job. But didn't you get the feeling, Dave, that maybe his uncle ran Pro Football Focus or something because they had him graded so high every week. It's like, hey, Wyatt Teller's phenomenal. And I think because of Pro Football Focus, more than anything, his price just skyrocketed. The voicemail made a really interesting point about Jarvis. And I think we all, as Browns followers, need to look at this team this year and tell me if you agree with this. This team this year, and know that it's going to change in 2022.
Yes.
I think this might be the last run at it with this crew. And I know they have not had a whole lot of runs at it with this crew. But you just said, Dave, they've got a lot of money tied up in Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry. Is that what you want to do?
No.
I don't know. You're going to have money tied up in Nick Chubb. You're going to have some money in Kareem Hunt. You're going to pay Baker. You're going to pay Denzel. Myles Garrett's already getting paid. You want to pay Wyatt Teller because why? You want holes for Nick Chubb and Kareem to run through, and you want to protect Baker Mayfield. I would think that maybe at wide receiver, we don't see both of those guys back next year. Take a look at what Pittsburgh has done. They have 3 good young wide receivers, and they brought back Juju after all. In Cincinnati, they had good young wide receivers. What did they do? They went out and drafted another one. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's where we see some money that maybe gets reallocated in a year or two down the road. And especially, I think Odell has to come back and play really, really well this year. And if not, I would assume that they wouldn't pay him next year. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. I think, Andrew Berry made a point of it at, when he was talking before the draft, before free agency. Every year in the NFL is different, and that's what he means. You're going to have to – the salary cap's going up, but they have so many young players. It's a great problem to have. Browns fans aren't used to this problem. We've got so many young players we have to pay that some of the veterans are going to have to be, let go on to greener pastures.
Well, and think about this. All of the additions they made on the defense, well, you got to pay those guys. And they needed the help on the defense. There's no question. So I think maybe this year we get a better look at what Kevin Stefanski's really looking to do on offense. If we didn't see it last year, and Odell coming back to me is the key to that whole thing. What does this look like with Odell in there? What does the offense look like? And is there anybody else on the roster? Is it Higgins? Is it Donovan Peoples-Jones? Is it Schwartz who comes in and makes that step and becomes that guy who maybe replaces Jarvis or Odell, or maybe really solidifies himself as the third wide receiver, and they go out and they sign somebody in free agency, or they go out and they draft a wide receiver next year? You're not going to be able to, you're just not going to be able to pay everybody. And because you can't pay everybody, you're going to have to make decisions. And in an NFL offense today, though wide receivers are key, look at the teams that have the veteran wide receivers. They're not. There are some that are really, really good. But as these veteran wide receivers are pushing 30, they're moving on to some other teams. And they're choosing not to be paid by the team that originally brought them in or that had them. And I wonder. That's just kind of something that I'm keeping an eye on as we go through this year. And if Jarvis and Odell aren't completely stellar in this offense, as you said, Dave, that's a lot of money to be tied up in 2 wide receivers. So I think just keep an eye on that, because you've got to protect Baker Mayfield. And if you're going to have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, you better have blocking up front for them. And if you do that and you can run the football and Baker is protected, I don't want to say you don't need top-notch upper echelon wide receivers, but maybe you go in a less expensive direction there.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. So the 2 old guys are basically saying it's a young man's game. Jeff Phelps from 92.3 The Fan and I.
Throw yourself into that bus there, mister.
I said that. Huh? You and I, we're old guys. It's a young man's game.
I'm older than you, so thank you.
We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we'll hear from a former NFL offensive lineman who's concerned about the Browns being the hunted. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us. Sports for CLE continues. We continue talking Browns football. Damian Woody on the Nate Coombs show on ESPN had this to say about the Browns going from the underdog to the favorites.
I like the Browns. I've loved the Browns roster. Here's what I would say. When you're a team that's the hunted now, you're not the hunter, you're the hunted. There are real expectations for the Browns. And I'm talking about, there are people talking about Super Bowl for the Browns. Can they handle that?
Let's bring back in Jeff Phelps. Jeff, it's a valid point, and I would be more concerned if Freddie Kitchens was running the Browns than with Kevin Stefanski with those expectations.
Come on, man. Where's the Freddie love?
The one thing that I like, every time somebody brings up the expectations, I've heard Kevin Stefanski say work a couple of times. I've now heard Baker Mayfield say we have work to do. I think that's the right message.
It is the right message. And Dave, if you don't have expectations, then you're not very good. To me, if you have expectations, that means you've done something, you've accomplished something, and the Browns did last year. Now you see if you can handle those expectations. If you can't handle them, you might not have the right people in place, or the right people might not have had quite enough time. So I think the expectations are pretty legit. I think they're deserved, and I think you're allowed to throw expectations on this team. You won 11 games and you won a playoff game, and you took the Kansas City Chiefs to within a play or two of being able to knock them out. I thought the Browns did a really nice job last year. And if people didn't have expectations about the team this year, it means they didn't buy what they saw last year. I bought what I saw. I thought they were really pretty good. And that was with a defense that we thought was in need of major help and without Odell Beckham. So the defense now has major help, and you have Odell coming back. So, and those expectations are I think they've been earned. And I think the Browns will live up to them. I really do. I think they're going to be very good this year.
Yeah, I would agree. Before we go, one last thing. Aditi Kikabala from NFL Network on the topic of which fan base deserves a Super Bowl the most. Let's listen to Aditi.
The question is, which fan base is most deserving? Which fan base had its team ripped out from him in what was supposed to be a Super Bowl contending 1995? Which fan base has had to wear paper bags? Which fan base had to have a parade for an 0-16 season? I have never seen a fan base more loyal through so much misery than the Cleveland Browns fans. They deserve it the most, guys.
There you go, Jeff. And that's from a Pittsburgh native. Let's put that in perspective.
Yeah. She's right, I think. Dave, we're partial. We both grew up here. We've worked the majority of our careers here. Our football fans especially. And we deserve something a little bit special here. So now I will say this. You always hear, well, we have the best fans in the NFL. No, we have the best fans in the NFL. I think there are a lot of really good fans in the NFL. Our fans are certainly in that group. There's no question to me about that. And after everything that's happened here, after the team leaving, after the NFL hurrying the team back, I thought, not giving it the time that some of the other expansion teams had to put their act together, and then just some, let's call them unfortunate decisions and happenings over the 20 years before this last regime going at it. Yeah, I think Browns fans deserve a break, and I hope it happens this year. And I really think it could. I think this team could be really, really special.
Jeff Phelps from 92.3 The Fan, Bally's Great Lakes Sports, Browns pre, post, and halftime, and various other outlets. Appreciate the time. Thanks very much. Enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much. Enjoyed it.
All right, buddy. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, Jeff Phelps from 92.3 The Fan. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we turn our attention to the Cavs. Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. We'll talk Cavs trade draft straight ahead. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
As the COVID-19 vaccines become available, you might be asking yourself, should I get it? And if I do, will I be able to go about life without putting my family at risk? You've got questions, and that's normal. The fact is, the vaccines are safe and effective. They're going to save lives. To get the latest on the COVID-19 vaccines, visit getvaccineanswers.org, because getting back to the moments we miss starts with getting informed. It's up to you.
Welcome back to Sports for CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. We turn our attention to the Cavs, and let's welcome in Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter for the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. So, Chris, national news that the Knicks are the most active in pursuing Collin Sexton. Now, let's begin with both you and I think Collin Sexton is actually a really good player, on the verge of becoming potentially an all-star. Is there any fit with the New York Knicks that becomes evident that would benefit the Cavs in trading Collin Sexton to the Knicks?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm glad that you phrased it that way, Dave, in terms of fit, because what I think all of this is, any conversation surrounding Collin, is a combination of fit and money. If the Cavs can find a way to rejigger the roster and improve a position of weakness by using Collin as a trade asset, then it's something that I definitely think they would explore. The Knicks are interesting because obviously they have Brock Aller in their front office. Brock Aller was with the Cleveland Cavaliers for about a decade in their front office, and he saw Collin Sexton every day. He saw him work. He could see things that other teams around the NBA, and he could learn things that other teams around the NBA don't know about Collin. So from that standpoint, it is a fit. But finding the pieces that the New York Knicks could give the Cavs to make it work, that becomes more difficult, Dave. Obviously, the Knicks have R.J. Barrett there, third overall pick in the 2019 draft. The Cavs love R.J. They tried to trade up for him on draft night and couldn't. So is that something that the Knicks would be willing to give up in order to get Collin? I don't know. But if they were willing to start a package around RJ, then I think it's something that the Cavs would explore. I think it's something that the Cavs would listen to. Short of that, it's hard to find the pieces that the Knicks have that would make the Cavs say yes to a Collin deal.
Yeah, I would agree. Kevin Knox is an interesting guy, but I don't necessarily know that. The picks in the lower end of the first round don't interest the Cavs at all, because unfortunately they've been picking out of where they should have been in the lottery, and that's kind of way. Again, they have some interesting pieces, but Chris, they have to find a way to get the higher end, the 1 or the 2 that you can then add Darius Garland to, and then you've got Okoro and you've got Allen. They have the periphery, but they don't have the main beams that you need to build around, and that kind of leads me to this question. So Jared Allen is a guy that is due for a big payday. Collin Sexton is a guy that's due for a big payday. Is there any way you can pay both of them and keep both of them at higher ends? Because again, they're neither one is that 1 or 2 pillar that you build around.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to look at it too, Dave. Could you pay them both? Sure, you could. But I think it becomes really, really difficult when you start talking financially. Because at the end of the day, the Cavs are running into a situation here, especially when it comes to Collin, where you have to assign a monetary value to him. They obviously like him. They know the things that he's capable of. He rolls out of bed and he gets you 20 points, and he does it efficiently. And there's value in that. And he's the best two guard that the Cavs have on this roster. He's arguably the most accomplished young player that they have on this roster. But they're now at a position where they have to assign a monetary value to him. And beyond all those things that I mentioned about Collin that make him a good player, he is an outlier. He is an undersized shooting guard. He's not a point guard. He's an undersized shooting guard who has clear defensive limitations. And him and Darius together have clear defensive limitations. So if you could pay Collin something in the range that accounts for all of those things, then sure. But I don't think Collin's representatives are going to see it that way. Collin's representatives are going to ask for the rookie scale max contract because Collin's reps also rep Donovan Mitchell, got him the rookie scale max. They'll point to De'Aaron Fox, who got the rookie scale max. And then it just becomes really, really difficult for the Cavs to justify paying a guy who can't be the guy that kind of contract. Jarrett Allen is a lot easier to explain because he's not going to command the same kind of money that Collin would in an extension.
Yeah, and again, you know, everything off the court with Sexton has been great. His work ethic has been outstanding. But your point is, you know, he may have outplayed what the Cavs value because of where they're at as a franchise. Here's another question. Is there any way that you can put together a deal that gets you the top spot, even if it involves, you know, the three and Sexton and something else? Do you see that working out where you could potentially get Cade Cunningham?
The Cavs are very interested in that, Dave. They've had multiple conversations with the Detroit Pistons about that. I've talked to a lot of people around the league and asked them, hey, what would it cost for a guy like Cade? What would it cost? And they said, obviously, the starting point is giving up the 3rd overall pick and then also a future first-round pick. But they think it's probably even a little bit more than that, just because Cade is so highly regarded, just because this draft class itself is so highly regarded. So I think the Cavs do have the pieces, but I think they have to be careful here because it's not LeBron James that they're trading up for. You know, it's not Luka Doncic. It's not Kevin Durant. It's Cade Cunningham, who is a very good prospect. He would fit the Cavs perfectly. He's the kind of player that the Cavs don't have and they absolutely need if they want to take the next step. But there are also other players in this draft class who would come in here immediately, not named Cade Cunningham, and be the most important player of this rebuild that you don't have to give up a future first-round pick for and maybe something else in order to do that. So I think they would be interested in it, but I think it has to be at the right price because everything nowadays, Dave, has a value. And as good as Cade Cunningham is, as much as the Cavs need him, they can't go overboard, especially in this situation that they're in, still trying to find the right pieces in this rebuild.
Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter for The Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. I'm not going to step aside, take a quick time out. Chris mentioned some guys not named Cade Cunningham who would fit. We'll hear who he thinks would fit here with the Cavs as they move forward if they stay at number 3. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Better days are ahead. Be ready with the training you'll need to get a great job. If you or your family has experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Whether you want to improve your skills, get certified, or train for a new career, go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So what are you waiting for? Register now for online and on-campus summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
First, they said cigarettes were safe. We know how that turned out. Now, they say they didn't market e-cigarettes to teens? Fact, more than 1 in 4 high school students are vaping, and 80% say their first e-cigarette was flavored. Vaping is harmful to developing brains. The reason we think vaping is safe? Marketing. Same lies, different day. Tell Big Vape to quit lying.
Welcome back to Sports for CLE. We continue talking Cavs basketball with Cavs beat reporter from cleveland.com and the plain dealer, Chris Fedor. So, Chris, we had mentioned if the Cavs can't trade up to get Cade Cunningham, there are some guys that are still available in this draft who would potentially be there and be a part of the rebuild. It doesn't seem like there's a clear-cut number 2. It seems like it's pretty evenly divided between Jalen Green and Evan Mobley. Is that accurate from what you're hearing as well?
Yeah, I guess I would toss Jalen Suggs in there too, although I think he's on the back half of that tier 2. Yeah, a lot of people do see it as Cade Cunningham as the best prospect in this year's class, and then the second tier is some combination of Evan Mobley, Jalen Green, Jalen Suggs. Maybe some people consider Scotty Barnes the versatile forward from Florida State. But that's about it. I just think the bottom line is, the way that I've written it, Dave, is that the Cavs are in a position at number 3 where there's no wrong answer, right? There's some guys who are probably a better fit for what they currently have on the roster, Evan Mobley being one of those guys. But if it's Jalen Green, he's a great fit because he's an incredible talent. If it's Jalen Suggs, he's a great fit because he's an incredible talent. If it's Mobley, he's a great fit because he's an incredible talent. And like I said, no matter who they get at number 3, that guy is going to come here and be the best and most important of the young players. Of all the guys that the Cavs have assembled over the last 4 years of playing the lottery, there's nobody that has the pure talent level as the group of guys that they're going to be picking from at number 3 here this year.
The other thing is if it is Green, if it is Mobley, that should, in theory, Darius Garland, as the point guard, going to make both of those guys a little bit better too.
And that's the thing. There are a lot of people inside the organization, Dave, that have come to believe over the last year, based on what Darius has been able to do, the rise that he made from his bumpy rookie season to his outstanding sophomore season, that of the young guys that the Cavs currently have on this roster, Darius is the best. Darius is the most promising. Darius is the one that has the most upside. So what can they do? What can they put around him to maximize him? What can he put next to him that is going to bring out the best in him and the best in whoever it is that they draft with the 3rd overall pick? Jalen Green would fit next to Darius Garland. Evan Mobley would fit great next to Darius Garland. Jalen Suggs would be a tough fit because the way that you want to use Darius is similar to the way that teams would want to use Jalen Suggs. You want to take advantage of that innate playmaking ability that Suggs brings to the table. And because of that, there could be a bit of an on-court clash between Suggs and Garland. So for me, at this point in time, I think Suggs would be behind both Green and Mobley, where the Cavs are picking at number 3.
The other thing to keep in mind about Darius Garland, young, only played 5-6 college games before he got injured, came back, and so his second year in the NBA, that ascension, not a surprise because he got bigger and stronger. I mean, he's a young guy.
It really is. He's 21 years old and he's still growing into his body. I had somebody phrase it to me a couple of weeks ago that he's growing into a man's body at this point in time. He's putting on weight, and you can see it in his face, and you can see it into his shoulders. And he does look like a different kind of player. And I think with that, Dave, comes new confidence for somebody like Darius. No longer is it a question about, can I play at the NBA level? Because I think there were legitimate questions about that for him as a rookie when he was going through some of those struggles. Like, oh my gosh, can my game translate? Can I make it here? Now it's, how good can I be here in the NBA? What's my ceiling here in the NBA? And I think the Cavs are wondering the same thing when it comes to Darius. But the best way to find that out is to surround him with players that they believe are going to allow him to reach that ceiling. And I think the truth is they are having some hard conversations, deep conversations inside that front office about whether Collin Sexton is the guy to put next to Darius that can allow Darius to be his best version of himself. And if that answer is no, then I think they try and find a way to find somebody that can be a better fit with Darius Garland, Isaac Okoro, Jared Allen, some of the other young pieces that they're assembling. But I'll say this when it comes to Collin, to come full circle, they don't have to do anything. They don't have to trade him immediately. They don't have to give him a contract extension immediately. If there's a ticking clock on the Collin Sexton situation, it doesn't expire until next offseason.
Yeah, and sometimes that patience pays off, which is, if you're going to, he's a good player. They made a good pick with him. They now have something that other teams should want. So that's the way you view Collin Sexton. Before we go, let me ask you this, and I know we've talked about this in the past. So one of the teams that is tied to Ben Simmons is the Cavs. We know that Darius Garland's agent, Rich Paul, is Ben Simmons' agent. Do you see that as potentially being a fit? Simmons is a guy that intrigues me because I think he just needs to change the scenery. That's, again, a younger guy. He's not as young as Darius Garland, but you want to give him a fresh start and let him go be the guy that he can be.
Dave, he's intriguing to the Cavs as well. They've had conversations internally about Ben Simmons and whether it would be a good direction for them to go when it comes to try and put some kind of trade package together for him. It makes sense from this standpoint. He is locked up on a contract for a number of years. So it's not like you'd be trading for somebody who could walk, who could leave in free agency in 1 or 2 years. If the Cavs traded for somebody, hypothetically, like Bradley Beal, it's a little bit riskier because of his contract situation. Ben is locked in. You know what you're paying him. That's not going to change over the next 3, 4, 5 years. And the Cavs don't have a guy like Ben Simmons. They just don't at this point in time. And it's very, very difficult for the Cavs to get a guy that talented. So when you have an opportunity to get that level of talent, you 100% have to explore it. You owe it to the organization to explore that. In saying all of that, he becomes a difficult fit because obviously you have to give up things in order to get him. And then there are other moves that any organization that's going to trade for Ben Simmons, they are going to have to make moves to fit his game best. Trading for him is an admission that you're the guy that we're going to build around. And then there are certain players that you have to have with somebody like that. You need shooting and you need spacing. And the Cavs don't have a lot of that. And they'd have to find a way to go out and get that. And that would take a lot of assets.
Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter for The Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Chris, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
You got it, Dave. Anytime, man.
All right, Chris Fedor. Make sure you read him in the pages of The Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. That'll do it for this edition of Sports4CLE. We will see you again tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Scheduled guests, Mac Robinson and Kevin Arnold. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you again tomorrow at 4 here on Sports4CLE.